Welcome to Indigenous Earth, where we explore indigenous wisdom to help you protect and connect to our planet. From the Paitavdira tribe of Paraguay, I'm your host, Frank Oscar Weaver. Today's guest is Andrea Everett from the Pueblo of Isleta. She's living proof that you can build a career protecting the environment while still staying true to your values. Andrea turned her passion for mapping and technology into a business called Matriarch Projection, flying drones, using GIS mapping, and doing environmental work that honors indigenous knowledge instead of just extracting from it. She's going to share practical advice about breaking into green careers and how she started her business with a midnight decision and a lot of faith. Wherever you're looking for a career inspiration or you want to understand how to work with the land in a more respectful way, this conversation has something for you. Check it out.
Name is Andrea Everett. My Indian name is Cherokee, which means a prayer feather that's been left as an offering, and I'm from the Pueblo of Isleta.
Thank you so much for that traditional greeting. And what part of the world are you in right now?
I am currently living in Isleta del Pueblo, which is in the El Paso, Texas area, West Texas, furthest West Texas. And we are surrounded by the city and some other, but we live in the county in an agricultural area.
That's great. I know that area of the country are very beautiful. And were you raised around that area? And if so, how did the environment shape your connection to nature?
Sure. Yes, I was raised with my grandmother until about the age of 10 on the reservation in the older village. We have two villages, and then we have what they call the Barrio Los Indios. I was raised in the corn village. They call it the old res. And then where I live now, it's the pumpkin village and they call it the new res. So yeah, I was raised in the Pueblo most of my life. I moved into the city close to middle school and I went to some high schools in the area. But when I was younger, all of my family lived within the same street. I still was there every single weekend. It wasn't that far for us. And I had a number of, we had like some after school programs. And so I had a number of mentors that, taught us how to make simple pottery and other crafts. And I had a mentor named Danny Archuleta who introduced me to what we call a Waco Tanks. It's a state park, but it's really an ancestral place of spirituality and prayer, and we're very connected there. And so I was introduced to that place, that special place, as a young child, and that really shaped my love for the land and my connection with the land, our plant relatives and our animal relatives, as well as and also the deities that live and are spiritual living beings there that help us every day.
What inspired you to do environmental work in your community?
I always really liked to just be outside. When we were kids, we really weren't allowed to be inside all day. They would kick us out in the morning and we would go out and explore. And I just really always had a connection. And at first, when I was young, I liked to argue about things, and I was really about just justice, and I always defended people, and so that translated into the land as well. I didn't end up being a lawyer. I ended up going to school for environmental science, both my master's and my bachelor's degrees. And during college, I further connected to the land and especially to the river as I was writing my master's thesis on the riparian changes within that landscape and how it's affecting our cultural continuity. So I spent a lot of time on the river and, in prayer and really just feeling later more of the pain of the river and, because most of the year the river sits dormant because of Elephant Butte Dam up north. Yeah, just sitting along the river in college and doing a lot of mapping out on the land and visiting different mountain ranges. That really solidified my path forward.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experience with the river. And this is the Rio Grande, right?
Yes. Yes,
Yes,
the Rio Grande. We call it Betla Usla, or Big River.
the big river, beautiful. Yeah, I shared before with you and the podcast of this walk that this elder challenges to take from where we were staying all the way to the Rio Grande. And when I was walking there, I was just thinking there was gonna be like a really big river, just because of the word Spanish grande means big. And when I get there, it was just a sliver of water, and I could see how far the river could have reached. And it's just really impactful, and just makes me think, like how much that has affected the people around it and the animals around it. So I can really feel that pain of the river. And so I thank you so much for doing the environmental work there. And you kind of touched a little bit about the work you were doing mapping. This is very interesting to me. And can you tell me more about the project that you started mapping and then going to the matriarch projection?
Sure. So at the University of Texas El Paso, there is an environmental science program, and there's different tiers. There's geology, biology, and hydrology. And during my bachelor's, I took the geology path. I always liked geology and rocks and crystals, and always made my parents lug down all kinds of rocks and crystals from the top of mountains when I was a little kid. And so that's the path I took. And with geology came all of the GIS classes that I took, geographic information systems classes that I took. And I actually started I worked for the Pueblo in different capacities for a while there. And my first position was a GIS assistant. So we had a specialist, and I was going to school still. And he really showed me and gave me more of a love for mapping. In 2020, during COVID, I turned 40. And I just, in the middle of the night, decided that I was going to incorporate a business. I was working for Prairie View A&M University, and I was teaching others. I had a community economic development position, and I had talked to other people, and I was helping people incorporate their business. And I never thought I was really going to do that. I kind of took a little bit of a turn, but I feel that that experience helped me to be able to build my own business. So in the middle of the night, at a few minutes before midnight, I turned in all my paperwork and incorporated a business. And my business name is Matriarch Projection, LLC. And so I incorporated this business, and for a couple of years, I took a few small projects, but I still continued to work as a county extension agent for Prairie View. And I ended up linking up with a food center out of Anthony, New Mexico, just north of here. And they asked me if I wanted to go in on a contract where they would be getting those GIS systems, and I would help to implement a lot of things and also do some digital storytelling projects using story maps. So, we did surveys using GIS surveys, and we cataloged now 12 Chihuahuan desert plants. And so that's been really good. I had a mentor for a little bit there, 2022, 2023, who is a tribal member from San Felipe and Kiowa Pueblos up north, between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. And she's a hydrologist by trade. And she really helped me instill my value system for my business. So I have a videographer, and I said, we're working with a few people, and I always do, like, depending on the agency and stuff, I'll, do work for pretty cheap, practically almost free, just because I, think that they're, a good cause or good people. And I told him they're good people. And he's like, I know they are, because you don't work with anybody that doesn't have some kind of purpose, or that you see value in. So I've just really tried to instill that. They always tell you to put a business plan together. And I started that, but really my business plan and my way forward is just rooted in my Pueblo core values, which is love, faith, prayer, community, relationships. So, and really, I don't do any type of extractive work or anything like that. I just, that's really, what I do. So I work with a lot of nonprofits is basically a lot of my
That is so cool. And you get to fly drones, right?
right. So we've done some 3D modeling and we do mapping. I've done some agricultural mapping over here to see the elevations and water and soil health. And then we do a lot of videography work as well. So I have a in-house videographer and he does beautiful work as well.
That is so cool. You're really blending the latest technology of droning and mapping, storytelling and digital media. So it's such a beautiful project. And, the GIS is a really booming career now that is really high pay and is considered a green job. So if somebody's listening to this podcast right now and this is an area that they're interested on, or even starting their own business, like writing before midnight your proposal for your own business, what kind of advice do you have for them?
So I think the one thing that was lacking in the GIS program, because I was actually and things have changed since I was the first person to get a GIST graduate certificate from UTEP. They had started that program in 2014. So I ended up in 2016 being one of I think the first one to get that. And some pitfalls that I saw in the university were that there was a lot of different kind of coursework that we did, but I think where it lacked was the practical knowledge and certain tools that we would use in the job sector. My advice would be to try and get some kind of GIS training and see the practical knowledge. I think as far as a business, you just kind of have to take that leap. I was fortunate for that grant to come in and it was a good chunk of money for the first payment. And my mentor had been telling me, you're gonna have to jump. You're gonna have to jump soon into the business. And so when that money came through, I said, this is it. Got to take that leap. So just not to be afraid to take that leap and really follow your heart. And if that's what you feel in your heart, don't get in any type of financial trouble or anything. I started off slow. And then when the opportunities started coming in, I took them. I think it's also just very important to stick to your values and what you really believe in. Right? And so, doing that work for me and sticking to my values and even having to say no to a lot of work because it wasn't aligned with my values. Um, Even though that was scary to have 3 children and, we have to make sure we pay the bills and everything. Even though that was scary, I stayed to my values and the people that are aligned with you and the frequency that you're putting out and the kind of work, they end up coming your way. So it's good to also just have faith in what you're doing and just keep pushing forward and get the things that you need to do for your business and just put yourself out there.
That's beautiful. And I so appreciate you talking about, having your values as a guiding force. I think that sometimes, we can be lost in the fog, be lost in the desert, on the ocean. But, sometimes, even if it's the darkest night, you can see a little glimmer of those stars. So it's so important to really have that inner conversation of figuring out what our values are and have that being a driving force.
Just kind of thinking about North Stars and what you were talking about. For a long time, I was feeling, there's remnants from colonization and colonialism in our communities and upholding those colonial systems. Um, I think the schooling and all of those things contribute to some indoctrination, right? So I kept thinking about how my community was hurting and how what we needed to do and how I could help with that, right? And so it kept kind of nagging at me in the back of my head. And I thought, you know what? I need to do this. I need to do this. So I started talking to other women and I said, let's do this. I'm just tired of kind of screwing each other over, right? And not taking care of each other in the right way. And sometimes that's subconscious and you give people grace, right? But I wanted to build something different and have a foundation of something different for us. And so I started talking to these women feast day last year when we were preparing. So, last May, June, we were preparing and I started like pulling women to the side that I thought would be a good fit for this organization. And I said, like, let's do this. So right after Feast, we started meeting and kind of putting together our goals and what we really wanted to do and the projects that we really wanted to do, what we wanted to teach each other, and how all of us had so many skills to teach each other. I'm very fortunate to work with all of these dynamic, multifaceted, talented women. I have electricians and cultural workers and chefs and decolonial workers and just beautiful mothers that work with us too. Our first project was to get some land, right? And start traditional farming again and really have the women push that forward because of colonization and the Spanish um, influence. A lot of our matrilineal roles had been taken away. And I hear stories and I know what instrumental part of our community women play, right? The matriarchs in our community. So, yeah, we're just really reclaiming our roles here. We keep going. We have a little under an acre of land, two large hoop houses, greenhouse type structures, and we're just making it happen. I knew that this was alignment for us when I was asked to be on a part of a climate committee through an organization called Preserving Legacies. And they applied for a Mellon Foundation grant. And the Mellon Foundation just decided to give every project area extra money. So we ended up getting a grant that we have for another year. The money's still coming through for another 30,000. So I said, "Oh, this money just came and we didn't even apply for it or anything. This is total alignment and this is what we're supposed to be going forward with." Yeah, we've been doing well. It's been a lot of work. I'm overwhelmed at times because I'm learning along the way, but I'm happy to be a lifelong learner. And I guess that's part of my life is being a farmer and pushing that traditional knowledge and just really just I think the core foundation of our group is caring about each other and really showing up in love all the time and having difficult conversations, right? And how we move towards healing because I feel that healing shouldn't happen in a silo. Healing is really meant to happen in community so that you have your support. So, as we're healing together as women and regaining our roles, that allows us to move forward in helping to heal the land and receiving that relationship and kinship and reciprocal relationships again. So it's been really good to start this project, and I'm just really looking forward to the future and how this can grow, and so that the women, the young women coming up, and I have a few young women and volunteers as well, that even if we don't have all of the experiences of being more of leaders in our community, even if that doesn't happen in my lifetime, I hope that those women can stand on our shoulders, right, of the work that we do.
What a blessing. What a blessing to find the community. What a blessing to get this grant. What a blessing to find this land. It's just a beautiful way to bring everybody together. And like you said, sometimes just things align. You put the energy out there and then people that are in the same symphony as you say, they are attracted and you're able to build something and it's beautiful. And I'm just curious, what kind of things are y'all growing there?
So we started in January with a bunch of tomato seedlings and under the lights, and we've been taking care of them. We started the soil amendments within the hoop houses. We went down actually 5 feet. We dug down 5 feet to get past the caliche layers that are around here. And so we ended up doing all kinds of infrastructure in there. And we have tomatoes and cucumbers growing in one so far. We're going to plant some chiles in the next coming weeks, we have Isleta Pueblo chiles and Tsuki Pueblo chiles that we've been growing under the lights still. In the other hoop house, we have a little bit of tobacco, and we also have amaranth growing in the field, which the first things that we started growing were a Hopi blue corn. And so we planted 3 rows of Hopi blue corn because we had the intention of during our feast day, we wrap our arrows and flechas that we dance with in corn, right? And so we plant corn for this. It doesn't go to seed, but it grows big enough for us to wrap it around our what we call flechas. And so we had the intention of making an offering as well. So that first row is going to be an offering that we'll harvest on June 12th. And then the the second and third row is also Hopi blue corn, but we've planted beans with there. We've planted some cover crops in there that supply the corn with the nitrogen nutrients that they have. And just, I believe, like a week and a half ago, we planted Hopi red corn a month apart so we wouldn't have any issues with cross pollination. And in another month, we'll plant our last bit of corn, which will be Hopi white corn. In the field, we planted mammoth sunflowers and some other wildflowers and marigolds, and those large marigolds that we can possibly give to the community because we're very influenced by the Mexican community here. And so, when Day of the Dead comes, the marigolds are used for the ofrendas and the altars. And so we're hoping to also provide that for our community. And so we've planted those. We have a large area where we're going to make waffle gardens. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but the Zuni people made these large waffle gardens, and they're indented type of garden squares. Traditionally, they were watered with ollas or pots, but we'll probably start out that way, but we have modern infrastructure, and sometimes everybody's not there to help, so we have to do things on that level as well. So after the feast, we're going to plant more amaranth, more tobacco because we use tobacco for our ceremonies, and we're going to plant squash, more beans, and then half of the field is going to be just cover crop. And then we'll go ahead and rotate every year after that kind of supplies the nutrients to the soils as well. So that's what we're growing so far. We're trying not to grow too much so we don't get overwhelmed on our first year. And we know that this first year is an experimental year, so we're trying a bunch of different things, right?
That is awesome. That's so cool. And you mentioned the marigold and the Dia de los Muertos. I have a butterfly garden here, and today I had my first monarch that came to visit, and I thought it was so cool to see this beautiful monarch coming into the sunflowers, and it kind of makes me think about the whole journey that they go, all the way to Mexico, traveling throughout the Americas, and all those plants, that you're planting traditional is so beautiful. And the pepper, I'm gonna have to request you give me some pepper whenever you have some. I haven't shared this yet, but I had a very vivid dream one time where I was visited by a jaguar woman, and she had a passion fruit on her hand, and she said, "I want you to make a hot sauce with passion fruit." And I was like, "Wow, this is so weird! Like I'm having such a vivid dream, and you're asking me to make a hot sauce." Like, is there anything else cooler to do, like a better vision? But she was like, "No, I want you to make a hot sauce with passion fruit." So I woke up and I was like, man, like I had this dream. It was so vivid. It was like, I felt like it was like a mission, but I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to make hot sauce. But I was like, I guess I have to do it. So I've been growing passion fruit. So I should have a crop soon. So I'm going to ask for some chile when y'all have it.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll
And
we'll
there's so
get
many.
that to you.
Awesome, awesome. And I remember the first time we were talking, you were sharing me about this really cool event that you had with the youth where you were like, it was such a cool story. Can you share with us?
Sure. We got a grant from the Texas Parks and Wildlife. My cousin and I, who is a assistant director for, I believe that's what his position is. He's like a mid manager for the empowerment department, which takes care of all education. And we put up for a grant on it was cultural resource and drone storytelling project. And so we ended up getting the money. It was a community outdoor outreach program, and we ended up getting the money. The kids not only learned different technologies like the drones, we got several drones and they learned how to fly the drones. They learned how to use Google Earth Studio. They learned how to use Drone Deploy. We ran out of time. They were going to learn how to use some video editing software, but I mean, the 6 weeks just passed by so quickly over the summer. They were part of the workforce program for the tribe, right? So it was great because they were getting paid alongside. And I think it's really important to compensate people for their work. It gives them more value and just shows appreciation for what they're doing. And so the project was mostly centered at Waco tanks, which I talked about earlier. And not only was it about storytelling and telling and flying drones and using these technologies, but it was really about developing kinship relationships with the living spirit beings that live in those areas, how to make offerings, how to pray. I completed the hardest hike of my life there. We went into places that I didn't even know existed, and I've been a guide for about 12 years. One of our partners, Alex Mares, who I consider my Dene uncle, he used to live at Waco Tanks for 15 years. He was a lead ranger. So I call him the Google of Waco Tanks, right? So he's been everywhere. And it was just such a melding of technology and cultural knowledge. We also had our traditional council and our war captain at the time helping us. It was just really a great melding of different leadership in our community and knowledge holders. And it really turned out to be really great for those kids. And, they're all part of my community. And part of that too was just letting them know how much I love and care for them and support them. Right. I think it's really important to show your love for people, especially in your community, because we don't know how much people tell their children they love them or anything like that. And so I just wanted them to know how much we supported them and just how important Waco Tanks was to us and the plants and developing those relationships. So it was a very meaningful 6 weeks, and I still have very meaningful relationships with a lot of those kids.
What a beautiful experience outdoors that they had, and introduction to drone flying, and it's such a cool project. So I hope that you'll be able to do it again in the future. And as we wrap up here, I'm just thinking, like you are really driven by your values. You're really driven by traditional ecological knowledge. Is there something that you feel like most people should know about it when it comes to indigenous wisdom?
I think it's really important to not see yourself in a colonial way. I feel it's very important to decolonize, and it doesn't matter what race you are, because we have to be very cognizant how we disengage ourselves from these systems of oppression. I think it's very important to not see ourselves in a hierarchical view and see ourselves as part of nature. And I think that's the beauty of rematriation and matriarchy, is that it's not a hierarchy. It's really a circle, and everybody has equal footing, and everybody's children are all of our children, right? And we all care and love for each other. So I think it's really important to divest from these systems and really get back to our relationships. I think relationships are the most important thing in this world as we're here for the short time that our souls are here in these lifetimes. And so, really, just building those relationships in a non extractive way, in a non imperial way. And that's kind of also what I do when I'm mapping, is divesting from imperialism and using my maps in a way that's not part of a structure that commodifies the land. We have to be very careful about how the land, the rivers, plants have all been commodified, right? We really have to see them as kin and build those relationships. And at first it's somewhat difficult because I feel like there's just a lot of indoctrination and there's a upliftment of individualism, and so getting back to community and forming your communities is especially important in the times that we're living in now, right? Because we are, prices of groceries and, farmers not being invested in and rights being taken away. We are all stronger together. So I think just building those relationships and seeing yourself as part of nature and getting away from those power dynamics that and harmful systems, I think is just really important to move forward. And that's something that people should actively be doing every day. And decolonization starts with the way that you think and changing your thought and your different mindsets and really worldviews.
That's a great answer. And I really agree with you, that we have to build those relationships and go beyond just, going to our friends' social media and then liking their post. Maybe, send them a text message or even better, like call them or like reaching out to a friend and maybe going out for coffee because it's so important to have those relationships. I highly agree with you. And is there any books that you recommend that you have read recently that you think that people would find useful?
I mean, I think braiding sweetgrass is like a staple now, and there's also a kids version as well with activities. Can't remember the title of it, but it's showing different cartographies and how to do mapping in a decolonial way, and it showed how indigenous people see mapping and how they map out different landmarks and where they gather, and in a different way, like there's environmental studies, and these environmental studies come out and say that there was no findings. And then they have the indigenous people do these maps, and there was locations everywhere. And I think it's because they don't have these relationships and don't see the land in that way. So yeah, that's part of that book. I probably have it right behind me. Yeah. So radical, I don't think we can see that. Cartographies and participatory map making from Latin America. So this is a really good book as far as mapping and doing that in a non-imperial way. It's been kind of a guidebook that I go back to. But there's one more book that is it's a Muskogee Tools of Futurity, and it's from Laura Harjo. And this is a wonderful book on mindsets and indigenous mindsets and how to see the universe and yourself within it. So those are kind of a couple of my foundations. I've read them several times. I continue to read them and go back to them when I feel somewhat lost or are being met with obstacles and things like that. I go back and look at them as a foundation and kind of recenter myself. So those are a couple of really great books that I recommend.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing those recommendations. I'm going to put those books into our bookshop link. It's a way that people can purchase those books, and then the not only they're going to be helping the author by purchasing those books, but they also help independent bookstores. So you can choose different bookstores that you can support. The one that currently I'm supporting is native owned. So if you just shop on that book, you're helping the author, you're helping the bookstore, and we get a small donation to keep up this podcast. So hopefully people can check that out. And when you're talking about that indigenous cartography book, it reminds me of this video that I seen that I believe is a Diné map maker that creates map, and there's so many other layers into the map making that is beyond what we think about, that is just distance. He puts emotion and history on it. It's just a beautiful video that I'm going to find it and put in the link so people can watch it. And I want to really thank you so much for your time, for being here. If there's one thing that people can do at home to make the planet a better place, what would you say that is?
I guess build a garden, sit outside, spend a lot of time outside. and reconnect yourself. I think it's very good medicine to work with plants and see them grow and talk to them and really see them as babies that you're helping to grow. So I think even if you're don't have the time to plant a big garden, I think you can do a small garden and just invest your time in that. I think being outside, being on the land, working with plants is just really good medicine and really great for your mental health. And also just the sun on you and that vitamin D and just how it heals you. I think those are the most important, even if it's just a small garden, even if you're only planting a little bit, even if it's just a small little box, a few pots. It's really important to go out there and connect with the animal kin because they have life um, and you can really help build that.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for that advice and the conversation. I enjoyed really talking to you, and I hope to connect with you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for listening. If Andrea's story inspired you, check out the books she recommended in our bookshop link: Braiding Sweetgrass, Radical Cartographics, and Muskokie Tools of Futurity. Your purchase support independent bookstores, the authors, and keeps this podcast going. And remember, you can start small. Even a small plants can really connect you to the land and make you remember that we're part of nature. Until next time, take care of each other and the earth. Aguje.